So hello everybody, and thank you for joining us this evening. Perhaps you'd just confirm that you can hear me clearly okay. I'm Karen Major, and I'm both a Ride With Your Mind coach and a Feldenkrais teacher. And I'm going to be working tonight with Claire, who's our guinea pig for this evening, in this Feldenkrais lesson. And this is the first Feldenkrais lesson of the series. So you might be wondering what Feldenkrais is all about and why you should do it. And I can tell you there are loads of benefits, and I could talk about it, including increased body awareness. So increased awareness of certain parts of your body or particular parts and the way you move. Increased awareness around your breathing, your posture. It also enhances your ability to learn and gives you a way into changing your habits. So one thing that Feldenkrais used to say was, once you know what you do, then you can control what you do. So it'll help you start to change things that you need to change on horse. But the best way to understand Feldenkrais is to start with a lesson and really experience it, because I can talk to you about what it is, what it does, but everybody's experience is different. So the first thing is to find a quiet, warm place where you can lie on the floor and you won't be disturbed, and then we'll begin. So there are a couple of things to think about. You might like, as Claire has here, to put some sort of cushioned mat or a blanket on the floor. And if you've got your hair in a ponytail like Claire has, I know with a lot of riders, they like to tie their hair back this way. It's a really good idea to drop the band down to the nape of your neck so that you're not lying on it when you lie down on the floor. So this lesson that we're going to do today is one of several hundred Feldenkrais lessons. But I have particularly chosen this one as a starting place. So Claire, if you'd like to lie down on the floor on your back. That's it. And just let your arms and legs be long. Now you'll see that Claire has got a folded towel on the floor here alongside her. I don't know if you feel like you need that underneath your head. It does look like your head is quite comfortable, but for many people, when they lie flat on the floor, it's better for them to have their head supported. And a folded towel is the best thing to use. Because if you use a deep cushion, it might stop your head moving in the way it needs to move, whereas a folded towel provides the height, but without being a cushioning effect that holds your head in place. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is to start with a body scan. And I invite you to join in. Ideally, you're going to follow this lesson by doing it rather than by watching it. Lessons are often taught in groups, and everybody's so involved with what they're doing, they don't notice what's going on around them. But then if you need to check something, obviously you can look at the video, but just listening to it is the best thing. So start by lying on your back with your arms and legs long. It's a position rather like if you were in standing and then we tipped you up to be horizontal. And let as many muscles go as you can. So don't feel that you've got to hold yourself in place. It's like, can you rest on the floor? And take time to observe which parts of your body jump to your attention first. So there might be parts of you that are comfortable or less comfortable. There might be parts of you that feel heavy or light. Maybe there are parts that feel long or short, or straight or crooked. There might be parts that feel high or low. There might be parts of you that feel like they belong to you and parts that don't. Very often people who've had an injury will say, well, this arm or this leg doesn't quite feel like it's attached to my body. There might be parts of you that feel like you're lying on a concrete floor, or parts of you that feel like you're lying on soft sand. There might be parts of you that feel like they're at rest, and parts of you that just feel like they just won't switch off. Doesn't really matter what it is that you notice. Just notice what it is that you notice right now. And maybe imagine you're going to write those things down in a diary. What would you write? What would you write about what you notice about your body right now? And then bend your knees and stand your feet. So your knees are up in the air and your feet are flat on the floor. And take a few moments to find where is the most comfortable place for you to have your feet. And just take a moment to feel how that changes the contact of your body with the floor. And then start to think about taking your back down to the floor, as close to the floor as you could get it. So it's by tilting your pelvis a little and pressing the back of your waistband down against the floor, and then gently release it back to wherever is neutral for you. And do that several times. And just feel when you tilt your pelvis, so you tilt and you release. So this isn't about holding anything anywhere, but it's about making the movement. And as you tilt your pelvis, just notice, does it feel like it goes in a direct line towards your head, or maybe it feels like it goes off to one side or the other? And just notice how you contact with your feet. Do you push through your feet? Do you push through one foot? Notice what you do with your belly muscles. Notice what you do with your breathing. Okay. And then pause with the pelvis in neutral, so you're using as little effort to do anything at all. And then think about taking the pelvis in the other direction. So it's as if your pubic bone is going down towards the floor and you're bringing your waistband up away from the floor. That's it. And then release that back to the neutral place. And do that again several times. And again, notice, how do you do this? What in you starts this movement? What do you do with your breathing? Do you feel a sense of your head moving in any way? Do you notice anything moving in your ribs? Maybe feel what you do with your jaw. Is your jaw tight? Is it relaxed? Okay. And then again, pause in the middle. And then join those two movements that we've done so far together. So one movement, you take your waistband backwards down to the floor, and then you take the pelvis in the other direction. So you lift your waistband away from the floor and you go between those two places. And if you've been watching the riding series, then you might think of this as the difference between hollow-backed and round-backed. And how can you do this movement with the least possible effort? So one of the things about Feldenkrais Lesson is You're trying to find the way to make these moves with the minimal effort. Okay, and then leave it, let your legs go long. Take a rest and feel your contact on the floor. Now, for some of you, this position with lying with your legs long may not be terribly comfortable. And if that's the case, then don't do it, and find a place where you can rest maybe with your knees bent and your feet standing. Or if you feel that you need to lie on your side for a while to rest, then that's perfectly okay. I will stop with Claire and rest at regular points throughout this lesson. But if there's at any time a point where you feel like you need to stop and rest, or you're thinking, oh, is this going to go on forever? Why am I doing this? Then stop, rest. Let your body recuperate and take in the information it's already gathered. Once you get into that place of frustration, you stop learning. It's the same with pain. If you're feeling discomfort, do less movement. And you can reduce the amount of movement until it's just a thought, just in your imagination that you're doing the movement, and go with it in a place where you can do it comfortably. The more confidence you give your body by reducing the effort and reducing the pain, the better it is. Okay, so once again, Claire, let's have you bend your knees and stand your feet. And once again, just gently rock your pelvis. So you go waistband down and then waistband forward. Just gently rocking and feeling how this feels now. Feel your breathing. And then come to pause in the middle. Ever feels like left hip away from the floor slightly and roll your pelvis to the right. That's it, yeah. And then back again. And you can make this movement smaller than that and less effortful. Okay, that's it. And again, do that several times. And just notice what's happening with your knees. And feel the knees. And just notice whether they move to the side as you roll your pelvis. And then I'd like you to see, can you keep your feet on the floor so they stay flat on the floor and the knees pointing towards the ceiling as you roll your pelvis to the right? So the knees have to do something different. And it may be that if you think about your left knee moving forward over your toes of your left foot as you make the rocking movement, then you'll start to find a different sense in the movement. Okay, so I'm going to leave Claire to explore this for a while, and if she's still struggling with it later on, I might just intervene to see if I can help her find a different way, but I suspect she may well, through the course of the lesson, find a different way on her own. Yeah, so the knees are still moving, and the knees do need to move, but they don't need to move side to side. So think about the left knee moving backwards and forwards. So as you press into your left foot, think of the knee moving more forwards. Yeah, forwards would be towards your toes. Okay. Yeah. Okay, leave it and just rest for a moment. You can rest with your feet standing. And then go the other way. So your pelvis comes up a little from the right and goes down to the left. So Claire's saying it's less movement. So different people will do this different ways, and we're just trying to explore and find different ways of doing things. So each time you come back, make sure you come back to what is truly neutral for you and allow yourself to rest just briefly at that point and then start the movement again. That's it. So you have a clear start and an end to the movement. Okay, and then pause again. You can leave the knees bent and the feet standing. And then go side to side. So one side of the pelvis comes towards the floor, and then the other side of the pelvis comes towards the floor. Make sure the pelvis is really resting on the floor, that you're not trying to hold the pelvis off the floor. So it's like a ball that would roll a little to the left, a little to the right, but the knees are trying to go straight forward. Okay, and then leave it. Let your legs down. Take a rest. So Claire says that's difficult. Okay. So this is one of those rest phases. And these rest phases are important. It gives your body time to process the information it's collected along the way. It gives you a chance to reevaluate your contact with the floor and see if that's changing. And if we're recruiting different muscles that you're not used to using, then it also gives them time to rest. So often we have a habit pattern of continually using the same muscle groups and not really being aware that that's what we're doing. And we're asking the body to do something a little bit different. And that's likely to involve recruiting those new muscles. And we don't want to exhaust them to the point where the muscles that are habitually used kind of jump in and say, hey, let me take over. So remember to rest often. It's better to rest and listen than it is to work through discomfort or tiredness. So once again, bend your knees and stand your feet. Okay. So at this point, I'd like you to imagine that you're lying on top of a clock face. And your clock face could be a watch face, a small wristwatch face underneath the back of your pelvis. Or it could be that you're lying on the clock face of Big Ben with your pelvis in the middle. And the important thing is that the 12 is towards your head and the 6 is towards your feet. Now, if you're lying on top of the clock face, that would put 3 o'clock over to your left and 9 o'clock over to your right. So just take a moment to visualize that. And then tilt your pelvis towards 12 o'clock. So this would be taking the small of your back, your waistband down towards, that's it. So that's taking the pelvis towards 12 o'clock. And then when you go in the opposite direction, that's it. You can push your belly forward and your pubic bone goes down. And that's taking your pelvis towards 6 o'clock. So now go between 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock and feel how that is. Feel your breathing and feeling that you're trying to make this as effortless as you can, as soft and gentle as you can. And that you're observing the quality of the movement. The quality is more important than the quantity. Okay, and then pause in the middle. Okay, and then take your pelvis down to 3 o'clock. So that's going to be down to your left and up from the right. Again, keeping the knees up. That's it. And then come across to 9 o'clock and then back to 3 o'clock, and go between 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock a few times. Okay, and leave that and just pause in the middle. Okay, now bring your pelvis to 12 o'clock, and I want you to think about where 1 o'clock is. So 1 o'clock is going to be out to the left a little and a little bit further down towards your feet. So can you roll your pelvis from 12 o'clock around the clock face to 1 o'clock and then come back to 12? So you're going to go between 12 and 1 and 1 and 12. That's it. And you get to repeat that several times. And you might like to notice just your 1 o'clock. Is it clear in your mind where 1 o'clock is? And is your pelvis able to find its way across to 1 o'clock from 12? Okay. And then once you've done that a few times, you could go from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock. So 2 o'clock is going to be a little bit further down the clock and a little further over to the left, and then back through 1 and to 12. That's it. And do that part of the clock several times. Okay, and again, just noticing your breathing. And for some of you might want to notice what your jaw's doing, or maybe your fingers or your toes. Very often there are parts of your body that kind of get involved that really don't need to get involved. And once you start to notice that's what they do, then you can start to do something about it. Okay. And then go from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock, around to 3 o'clock where we've been before, and then from 3 to 2 and to 1. That's it. And just take a few moments to explore that quarter of the clock. Okay, and then leave it, let your legs go long, take a rest. So again, I'm just going to highlight to Claire again that she doesn't have to wait for me to say stop and rest. So if you need to stop and rest before I've said it, then do. Yeah? Just feel how your body feels on the floor right now. Okay, once again, bend your knees and stand your feet. And again, you can take as long a break as you need to. You can always, when you play the recording of this, you can hit the pause button and resume at your own leisure time. Okay, so once again, bring your pelvis to 12 o'clock. And this time from 12 o'clock, can you go around to the right and down a bit to find 11? And go between 12 and 11. Just notice, how is it to take your pelvis in this direction? So very often people will find that one direction is easier than the other, or just different. There's a difference somehow in the way that you do it. They may not be able to specifically say, oh, this is what's different, but you'll be aware that there's a difference. Okay. And then go from 12 to 11 to 10. And then back from 10 to 11 to 12. That's it. And continue to do that part of the movement. Okay, and then go from 12 to 11 to 10 to 9, and then back through 10 to 11 to 12. That's it. And just take a few moments to explore that quarter of the clock. Yeah, remembering to pause anytime you need to pause. So whilst these lessons some of them may not look very physically active, actually they're quite mentally active. And what you're doing is teaching your body new movement patterns, potentially. Okay, yeah, that was nice that you stopped and rested when you needed to. So I'm going to let Claire have a little break. And while she's resting, she can be feeling what's going on in her body and just letting things chill. And, you know, this, as I said at the start, is one of many hundreds of Feldenkrais lessons. And it's regarded as one of the classic Feldenkrais lessons. And I think it's particularly relevant for riders because it really takes your attention to your pelvis and an understanding of what your pelvis is doing. And when you're walking, very much your legs swing from your pelvis, or could or should swing from your pelvis, and your pelvis is relatively still and your legs are moving. When you're sitting on your saddle and your thighs are hugging against the saddle flaps, then what actually happens is your pelvis moves around your thigh bones and your hip joints. And when you put your knees bent and your feet standing, you're effectively fixing your feet and your thighs, and you're moving your pelvis around those hip joints in rather the similar way to which you would when you ride. So let's bend your knees and stand your feet again. Okay, and once again, just rock the pelvis between 12 and 6 and see how that feels right now. So some of you may have done some Pilates in the past and have that thought in your mind that you have to pull your belly button back to your spine. In this work, you need to kind of let that idea go and kind of go, it's not necessary, and allow your belly button to push forward as you push your pelvis forward. So as you go to 6 o'clock, your belly can push out and assist that movement. Otherwise, half your body is saying go forward and half of it's saying stay back. It's a bit like in the groundwork. I'm sure Ali's talked about stop and go, and you don't want to be telling your body forward and back at the same time. Okay. Then pause and just go between 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock again and see how that feels. Okay, so Claire's saying she's still struggling with that. So I'm repeating what Claire says because I know she's not mic'd up, so you can't hear her. Okay, and then pause in the middle. Take your pelvis to 6 o'clock. That's it. So you push your belly forward and your pubic bone goes down. Now from 6 o'clock, go around your clock to the left and up a little bit to find 5. So going from 6 to 5 and back to 6. Okay, and once you're kind of clear on where 5 is, then you could move to go from 6 to 5 to 4 and back through 5 to 6. That's it, and repeat that several times. So by repeating the movements several times over, you're starting to rewire your brain. So there's a lot of stuff about neuroplasticity around at the moment, and how your brain can change. And by exploring these patterns and repeating the patterns, you rewire the brain to understand more clearly that movement pattern. Okay, and then you can go from 6 to 5 to 4 to 3, and then back through 4 to 5 to 6. That's it. And then try that bit several times over. Just explore it. Feel, what is it you do? Which bits are clear? Which bits are less clear? Feel what happens in the front of your hip socket on the right as you go around to the left. So you might feel the thigh bone almost moves away from your torso, opening the angle of the hip in the front. So in this joint at the front here. Okay, leave it, let everything down, have another rest. And then when you're ready, bend your knees and stand your feet. Okay. This time, bring your pelvis to 6 o'clock again. Okay. And from 6 o'clock, can you find your way around the clock to 7 and then back to 6? Okay, and then from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock. And back to 7 and 6. Make sure your waistband's away from the floor, your belly button's pushing forward when you're at 6 o'clock. So just check when you're at 6, you're really at 6. So that's it. And then you can come from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, which is halfway between up and down, and over to your right, and then back from 9 to 8 to 7 to 6. That's it. And just do that a few more times, really feeling, where are those numbers? Are they always in the same location? If it was like rolling over a rubber stamp, would you always put the imprint in exactly the same place, or would it kind of be rather fuzzy around the edges? Okay, that's it. Okay, so Claire's, again, very wisely chosen to leave it and rest. Okay, when you're ready, bend your knees and stand your feet again. Again, just feel your contact with the floor. Okay, just rock between 6 and 12, 12 and 6 a few times now. Feel how that feels. So if nothing else, it should start to feel a little more familiar. And feel how the movement travels through your body. So you might feel the pressure on your feet, the push through the knees, the rolling of the pelvis, the movement of the ribs, maybe moving through your head and your neck. Okay, and then pause in the middle. And then go between 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock. Feel how that feels now. Okay. And then pause. This time take your pelvis to 12 o'clock. Roll your pelvis around from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock. And could you come straight across the clock from 1 o'clock to 7 o'clock? So 1 is upper left and 7 is lower right. So and go between 1 and 7, 7 and 1 a few times. Can you get a sense of that line? Okay. And then pause at 1, come through 12 to 11. And from 11, go across the clock, this time to 5. So now we're going top right to lower left. That's it. So 11 to 5, 5 to 11. Okay, and then when you're at 5, pause again. So 5 is lower left. That's it. And then come through 6 to 7 to 8. So around the clock edge from 5 to 6 to 7 to 8. And from 8, go in a straight line across the clock to find 2 o'clock. So from 8 to 2 and 2 to 8. So very often people say to me, this is like gymnastics for the brain. It's not just about the movement, it's getting your head around the movement. Yeah. And to 8, that's it. Okay, and then pause at 8, come up through 9 to 10, and from 10 o'clock, go across the clock to find 4 o'clock. So 10 through the center to find 4, and then from 4 back across to 10. Okay, and then leave it, let your legs go long, have another rest. So Claire's saying it makes her brain ache. So, and I think that's often the case. And you will find doing this lesson that very often there are numbers on the clock it's really easy to get to, and numbers on the clock that are very vague, or they might just well be missing. And you're kind of going, I don't get it. You know, for me personally, the area between 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock is always tricky. And this lesson really kind of highlights in my body where I am. I have had a significant asymmetry. When Mary wrote her book Clinic, I was the model for the rider with the asymmetry. My left side would want to drag behind my right side. My left leg would want to come back and up. My right leg would want to come up and forward. And I've been working on that now for several years. Generally these days, it's not the first thing that grabs people's attention when they see me ride. But if I get stressed, my old patterns tend to creep in. Okay. So once again, bend your knees, stand your feet. Okay. And what we're going to do next is I'm going to talk you around the clock in a clockwise fashion. And what I want you to do is to notice as you go around, which are the numbers that are really clear, which are the numbers that are a bit more fuzzy or missing. Where is the movement smooth and easy? Where is it sticky? Are there places you want to go faster or slower? Are there places where you hold your breath? So just notice what it is that you do as you go around your clock. And, you know, you've lived your life this long without being able to go around this clock perfectly. And you'll live the rest of your life. If you don't ever do it again, you won't die just from the fact that you can't do this. But it's a topic of interest and may explain some of the movement patterns you have when you're moving on the ground and when you're riding. So bring your pelvis to 12 o'clock. Okay, and then take it around to 1 o'clock, then 2 o'clock, and down to 3 o'clock, which is the leftmost place. And then down and in a bit to 4 o'clock. And then down and in a bit still to 5 o'clock. And finally to 6 o'clock. Yeah, so yeah, okay. And then from 6 o'clock, come around to your right to find 7 o'clock, to find 8 o'clock, to find 9 o'clock, and then 10 o'clock, and 11 o'clock, and then return to 12 o'clock. And I'd like you to go round the clock a few more times, really that slow or slower, feeling where is it that you find easy? How can you find the ones that are proving more tricky? And it may be they're a little further away, or it might be that they're a little closer to you than you think. That bottom corner, she's saying. Okay. Yeah. She can't get from 3 till 6. And this will be Claire's individual pattern. It's part of what makes Claire Claire. And everybody will have their own individual stamp. So just explore around the clock. Gently, gently. Just with an inquiring mind rather than a, oh, I've got to get there kind of anxiety. So breathe. That's it. Yeah. Because when you're doing this on your own at home, you can take as long as you want to kind of explore. And if there's somewhere that's really sticky, you could go backwards and forwards over it a little bit, trying to just feel, what is it? Where is it? It's kind of a bit like you go off track a little bit. It's like I haven't updated my sat nav, and every now and then it'll tell me I'll be on the motorway and it'll tell me I'm off road because the motorway's slightly moved position or been widened, and the sat nav thinks I'm totally off track. But it's like, yeah, where are you right now? What is it that's going on? Okay, and then when you've finished this one, then leave it and rest. So the human body is a complex beastie, and we all have our own individual patterns and habits. Some of them we've had from birth. You know, how do you breathe? You know, people often think that everybody breathes the same way, but actually that's not so. And maybe the way you took your first breath may be an indicator of how you're going to breathe long term, or if you've had a fright somewhere along the line. Very often people start breathing in their upper chest more when they've had a shock in their system, and they need to find a way to let that go to be able to breathe well into their bellies. And you'll move your hips differently and your arms differently, and it's almost like every individual part of your body is individually wired. That's what makes you unique. That's what makes you you. And you may know that if you see a good friend or member of the family walking up the road, long before you've seen their face, you might be able to recognize them from the way they move and the way they walk. And that's part of your individual stamp, your uniqueness. So it's something to embrace rather than something to reject. But once you start exploring what it is that you do, then sometimes you can say to your body, actually, there's an easier way of doing this, a less effortful way. Okay, so once again, bend your knees and stand your feet. And this time, bring your pelvis to 12 o'clock. And this time, I'm going to talk you around the clock in an anti-clockwise direction. But what I want you to do is to just imagine what it's going to be like when you do it. So you're not actually going to do this movement, but you're going to imagine what it will be like when you come to do it. So we're starting at 12 o'clock, and then you're going to go to the right and down a little to find 11 o'clock, to 10 o'clock, to 9 o'clock, which is out to your right, halfway between up and down. And then from 9 o'clock around to 8 o'clock, and coming further into 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and then 6 o'clock. And 6 o'clock is going to be the place where you've got that arch in your back, you've got your hollow back, your belly's pushed forward, your pubic bone is down towards the ground. And then from 6 o'clock, coming back up the left from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock, from 6 o'clock to 5 o'clock, then 4 o'clock and 3 o'clock out to your left. And then coming back up the last bit from 3 o'clock to 2 o'clock to 1 o'clock, and finally back to 12. So when you're ready, take your pelvis around your clock in the anti-clockwise direction. Again, just feeling for where's clear, where's not clear. Where you want to go faster or slower. Noticing what you're doing with your breathing. So go around that clock a few times, just feeling, how is it? How does it compare to how you would imagined it would be? Okay, and then leave it. Let your legs go long again and rest. Okay, when you're ready to, bend your knees and stand your feet again. Okay, this time, starting in the middle of your clock, what I want you to do is to do a spiral that gradually makes a little circle in the middle and then makes the circle bigger and bigger and bigger. And then when you've made it as big as you feel that is comfortable, then change direction and come back in your spiral. So starting in the middle, go round in a circle. Just notice which way round you've chosen to go. That's it. Making it a little bit bigger until you feel you need to change direction, and then change direction and spiral back to the middle. Okay, leave it, lay everything down and rest. So you might want to play with that a little bit more, but I've got Pete waving at me to say we're getting towards the end of time, and there's a couple more things that I'd really like to do before we wind up. So Claire, let's have you bend your knees and stand your feet again. Just explore 6 and 12 once more. Feel how that feels now compared to earlier. Okay, and then can you make it lighter and quicker? Could you make it kind of a little jiggle? Lighter, quicker still. Quicker, smaller, lighter, quicker, smaller, lighter. That's it. And feel how the movement travels through your body, from your pelvis to your head, or from your pelvis to your toes. Or is it from your toes to your pelvis to your head, or the other way around? Okay, pause in the middle. And just go from between 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock a few times and see how that feels now. Can you feel those knees traveling forwards a little bit? Ah, there you go. Ah, now she's got it. Now she's got it. Yeah, so that's very different to earlier on. All right, pause in the middle. And I'm sorry if I'm kind of racing on a bit, but I want to just try a couple of extra things for you. So from here, could you just roll your pelvis in a straight line between 1 o'clock and 11 o'clock? So can you think where 1 o'clock is and where 11 o'clock is, and roll your pelvis between 1 and 11. That's it. Okay, and if you can think about your seat bones, then you could think about your seat bones and where your seat bones would be moving. And you could put your hands just on the front of your hip joints. So find the bony prominence and just feel how your hips move forwards and backwards as you do this. Okay. And then go, so pause, and instead of going between 1 and 11, go between 2 and 10. Okay, so this is a slightly bigger movement. And this is kind of very similar to what happens when you're walking your horse. It's not exactly the same, but it has definite components of the walk movement. So this would be a bigger, longer flowing stride. And if you go back to being between 1 and 11, this would be a smaller, shorter, more collected stride. Okay. All right, and then pause. The movement between 6 and 12 would be much closer to what happens in sitting trot. And the diagonal movements that we did across the clock, so we did from 1 to 7, we did from 11 to 5, we did from 2 to 8, we did from 10 to 4, those would be much more relevant and closer to what happens in canter, and also some of the movements that you need for any lateral work. So if you're into lateral work. And if you've got places in your clock that are a bit vague or wishy-washy that you can't quite nail, you may very well start to notice in your riding that that's part of the pattern that you're missing. So some people will say to me, oh, I can't canter left. Yeah. And then they'll discover that they can't do sort of 10 o'clock down to 4 o'clock. And that's part of the pattern that they're missing in their body, which makes it difficult for them and their horse to canter left, for example. All right, so just let your legs go long again. Take a few moments to observe your contact with the floor. So remember that diary entry you wrote at the start. You could go back to that and say, well, after the lesson, what I noticed about my body was, and just notice what's happening in your contact with the floor right now. Okay, and then when you're ready, gently bend your knees, stand your feet, roll yourself onto your side to come to sitting. Okay, and then gently come up to just stand on the floor. Stand on the hard floor rather than your mat. And just take a moment or two in standing to feel how that feels in your body right now. Got any thoughts on how it compares to normal? So Claire's saying she feels taller. Yeah, my back's not as tight. It felt quite tight when we started the lesson. Right. By the end of the lesson, it wasn't as tight. Okay, so Claire's saying at the start of the lesson, her back was feeling quite tight, and now it's less tight. Okay, so I want you to do one more thing before we finish here. So just bend your knees a little bit, take your feet a little further apart. It's kind of a little on-horse position. Imagine you've got a laser light attached to your tailbone. And then can you draw a circle on the floor with your tailbone and feel how that feels? That's it. And you could try making it bigger or smaller. Feel how your pelvis can move around. Yeah, okay, so she's saying feels like it moves more than normal, and then just have a change of direction and see how it feels to go the other way. Okay, she's saying definitely more than normal. Okay, just go for a little walk around. I mean, we haven't got a lot of space here for you to walk, but I recommend that you walk around a little and just feel how this feels in walking. Okay, so Claire's saying across her hips feels looser. You can move your legs more. Okay, so this is a great lesson to do, and very often if I'm working with a group, I'll do this lesson with them, and then they might go on their horses and find that it's very different, the feeling that they get. Very often people who struggle to find their seat bones will have found their seat bones. People who are very hollow or very round will have found a more neutral place in their sitting. People who struggle to breathe may also have found different breathing patterns. Yes, again, Claire's saying her breathing at the end was more conscious and breathing deeper. Okay, thank you very much for being our guinea pig. And so this was the first lesson in the series, and the next one will be coming in a few weeks' time. Next time we won't be working on the floor, but we'll be working with a chair, so you'll need a hard chair for the next lesson, and we'll go from there. Okay, thank you very much.